Hi guys, welcome back to Blind Strike Exotics. I'm John, and this is my big girl Annie. She is a lemon blast, which is a pastel pinstripe. She gets to open today's video because we are going to talk about how to buy your first ball python. And she wasn't my first ball python; she was actually my second, but she has the longest tenure here. I want to go over with you guys where to start looking for ball pythons, whether the ball python is right for you, where to buy it from, how to buy it, what genes to look at, how you know you're getting a healthy snake, how you're buying from a healthy breeder, um, and all that fun stuff. So we can dive into that here in a second. I wanted to remind you guys at the top of the video to please remember to hit the bell and subscribe. I think over 85% of the views on the majority of my videos from people that aren't subscribed yet. So please do that. That helps me out a ton. So let's dive right into how to buy your first ball python. As in kind of upfront disclaimer, if you're not familiar with the ball python world, there is one thing to be wary of when purchasing one. It's called wobble. It is a neurological disorder that is tied to specific ball python genes. The biggest one would be the spider gene. Second biggest is probably champagne. There's also hidden gene woma and woma, but spider is probably almost definitely the biggest, and champagne is probably the next biggest. I would say most snakes that have that gene in it thrive. There can be instances where they don't. Basically, what wobble does is it kind of almost exactly what it sounds like. The snakes have trouble righting themselves. They have trouble keeping their head up. They have trouble rolling over. They have trouble striking at food at times. Sometimes you can't really see the wobble. So there's some spiders that don't have very much or any at all. And there's others that are so bad that as an animal lover, it makes me sad. I do not work with any of those genes. It's a proven neurological disorder. I do not think it's right to keep breeding that trait if it causes basically a birth defect, a neurological disorder. I don't. It's not okay with me, and I will never breed them, and I won't own them either. Quick story. When I first started buying ball pythons 2 years ago, I purchased a snake from one of the bigger breeders. I'm not going to say who, but I bought a snake that was a 3 or 4 gene animal, and I got it home, and I knew at this point that I did not want to buy anything with spider in it. And I got it home, and it would crawl along the tub, and then it would go up the side, and then it would crawl upside down along the top of the enclosure like this, and then it would sort of just kind of fall over like upside down. So I emailed the breeder about it, and he said, he said, it kind of sounds like spider wobble. He said, which snake was it again? And I told him, he's like, yeah, it probably has spider in it. He's like, we can return if you'd like. And I said, yeah. I said, I don't want this. Like, I don't want a snake with spider in it. And he returned it. It was his mistake because it didn't have spider listed in the genes. That was my one and only experience with the spider gene, and it kind of broke my heart seeing that people are purposefully breeding this animal. And no, they don't all come out like that, but I'm sure a lot of them do have that issue too. I just don't think it's right. There's been a lot of arguing in the ball python world about whether or not it's okay to breed those genes, and I'm on the side of no, it's not okay. So it is just as a fair warning up front when you're first starting to look at snakes, if it has the spider gene, if it has the champagne gene, hidden gene woma, or any of that, there's a potential for it to have the wobble. So you can research that on Google a little more if you want to know more about it. When you're buying a snake on MorphMarket, just look at the genes that are listed. It should be on the right side of the page. It'll tell you what the traits are. Look for that. If you're buying a snake where it doesn't list the traits, which is possible sometimes the breeder doesn't put them there, or sometimes MorphMarket doesn't automatically set them in there. Just look for it in the actual name of the snake. If the snake is called a bumblebee, anything that's called a bee is usually just a spider with a pastel. So even if it doesn't say spider, you kind of have to know your trait combos, because a spider and a pastel is a bee, but it doesn't say spider anywhere in the name. So you have to be wary of that sort of stuff too. So just a kind of a fair disclaimer for you guys that aren't familiar with the ball python world, that there's those couple traits that do come with some added baggage that you may or may not care about, or want to invest in. So just be wary of that when you are purchasing. My hands are kind of tied here, but I wanted to start off with really kind of the most important thing is size of the snake before you even get into anything else. This little guy here, who is currently up for sale on MorphMarket on my store, he's a lesser Mojave. He is about 2 months old, and as you can see, he fits in the palm of my hand. But he won't stay this way forever. This big female here, she is the biggest ball python I own. She's about 4,300 grams, and she is humongous. They don't all get this big, but I have probably 3 females that are maybe 3,500 grams or more. That means she is over 8 pounds. The other ones are close to 8 pounds. That's a big snake, and she requires a large enclosure. This huge ARS rack fits adult female ball pythons perfectly, but if you are going to be buying it as a pet and you just want one snake, you're probably going to need a PVC enclosure that's probably 4 by 2 feet. So they get quite big. So the first thing to really pay attention to when you're shopping for ball pythons is it's not like a corn snake. It's not only going to get a couple feet and be real thin. She is a big, hefty, thick snake. I can barely fit my fingers around her. I don't even know if I can. This is not a snake that you're going to let your little kid handle by itself. Maybe your teenager will be okay with it, but I'm strong enough to uncoil her if she coils around my neck, but your little kid under 10 probably wouldn't be. So they do get quite big. Not that they're going to try to hurt you on purpose. But she's a big girl. She eats a really big rat. And they start off nice and cute in handheld size, but after 2, 3, 4 years and a lot of meals, they get very big. So make sure that you're okay with a snake that gets this big, that gets this thick, before you even think about buying a ball python. So knowing how big a ball python gets is really kind of 1A. And 1B, and really the overall point of step A, or step 1, is to do your research. You need to know how big the snake gets. You need to know how often the snake eats. You need to know how big of an enclosure or aquarium the snake needs. You need to know that sometimes ball pythons can be picky eaters. You need to know what their temperatures need to be, if you can keep the temperatures up in that range in your house. You need to know what their humidity needs to be. And you need to buy all of the necessary equipment. You're probably talking about a couple $100 to buy all the equipment you need to house the snake. And that doesn't include your monthly bill on food, which isn't going to be super expensive if you have one snake. But you can't put a little baby ball python in a huge aquarium. So you need to have enclosures that grow with the snake as they get bigger. So you're not putting that tiny little baby in a 4 foot by 2 foot aquarium, because it's probably not going to thrive. It's probably going to have a little too much anxiety about being in such a huge aquarium. So you need to buy, there's an investment in housing that does change throughout the lifespan of your snake. But there's a lot of other things that get involved into it as well. And you need to make sure that you can take care of these guys very well. They don't have crazy humidity requirements, but they do need to have a very hot environment. my number one mistake when I first bought Annie was I didn't know that I needed to keep the whole entire room about 80 degrees. So I was trying to make up for that by turning up the heat on her heat pad. What that ended up doing was burning her underbelly because the heat in the bottom of her tub was way too hot, because I was trying to make the cool end 80 degrees and keep the hot end hot. Well, the hot end got too hot and she got some not major burns, probably minor burns on her belly, which took her probably 2 or 3 shed cycles for it to come off. Luckily, nothing got infected. Luckily, I kind of pointed it out real quickly and was able to make the change to my reptile room. But your room that the snake is going to be in needs to be very warm. It needs to be probably close to 80 degrees. So these aren't temperate, weathered snakes. They're not like corn snakes where you could probably be okay with leaving them, in your house on any day of the week just with their heat spots. These live in a very hot environment. So that's a big thing when you're purchasing one of these snakes, is to make sure that the room that they're in is going to be kept very hot. The other part of the research is knowing how much you want to spend on the snake itself after you buy and price out all of the equipment. These snakes can range anywhere from $25 to $15,000, and there's a I think currently like a Paradox ball python that's a couple years old. It's like I think $30,000 or $40,000. But the majority of them at the high end are $15,000. But for a normal one, you can pay as little as $25,000. So you need to know what patterns you like, how much you're willing to spend on the snake. If you're just buying one, do you care how fancy it is, or you just want the snake? For me, I started off with just a pastel ball python that I bought at a local reptile show. At that point, I really fell in love with them, and I decided that I wanted to buy a small collection and try my hand at breeding them. That's when I bought Annie. I bought her when she was probably 1,100 grams. And I've raised her up since then, and she's probably double that now. I think she was over 2,500 grams when I weighed her at the beginning of this breeding season. And then I decided I wanted to get blue-eyed Lucies, which are the white snakes with the blue eyes. So I bought my boy Shredder, and I bought 2 other all-white snakes, Snow White Snake and Baby Butter. And I actually bought Baby Butter's mom, too, which was just a single gene butter, super pastel. So I had 3 females that I was going to breed him to, and we did actually breed them this past year. Baby Butter was the only one who didn't lay eggs for me. But, so I knew at that point that I wanted to start off with my blue-eyed Lucies. So you need to factor in the price of the snake as well that you want to purchase. If you have your dreams on a $500 blue-eyed Lucy, you need to factor that in. You can't go cheap on buying the enclosure and buying the heating elements and buying the water dish and buying the hides. You need to make sure you buy all of the equipment, have the terrarium set up first before you decide to buy on the snake. So you need to factor that into your budget, and then you need to go from there. If you really want the more expensive snake, you're probably going to need to wait a couple weeks or a couple months until you can afford it, but you have to set up the enclosure first. After you've done your research, after you've found out how big the snake gets, what the enclosure requirements are, what their lifespan is, which can be over 20 years. So I'll leave a link below. I have a little fact cheat sheet on my Facebook page pinned to the top that tells you basically all the basic stats you need to know about a ball python in its life. After you do all that good stuff, the next thing you want to do is pick out a snake you want to buy. After Annie, Shredder here, who's a Super Mojave Banana, was the next guy I bought. I knew that I wanted to get into buying the blue-eyed Lucies. He's not really white right now because he's pink, because he's going in the shed. His eyes, as you can see, are, if he turns around for you, his eyes are very cloudy, and he's pink. These white snakes turn pink when they go in the shed. I wanted to get into blue-eyed Lucies. So I bought Shredder here, and I bought my other white females to grow them up because I knew I wanted to breed them. Back when I bought him, the females were still probably around the same price they are now, but these guys, I think I maybe paid $300 for them. Now these guys blue-eyed Lucies are going for $500-$600. So prices went up a lot since I bought them early 2019. They are really one of the coolest snakes. Some of these guys have blue eyes, but some of them have like bright blue eyes. So you'll need to see, when you're searching for them, if you actually tell the color of their eyes from the photos. But they're beautiful snakes. Once you pick out the snake, the second part of picking out the snake is making sure that you're buying it from a reputable breeder. I do not recommend buying from Petco, or I would probably say most pet stores. They don't have a track record of keeping their snakes real healthy. I don't promote them. There are plenty of fantastic breeders on MorphMarket or at your local trade shows that really earn the money that you spend on their snakes, even if they cost a little more than what are at Petco. You're paying for quality when you're buying stuff from breeders most of the time. Personally, I have since Annie, I've probably purchased over 50 ball pythons, and I would say 95% of them have been through MorphMarket. And the biggest warning that I have on there is check out the seller rating. I haven't had any nightmares buying on there, but I did buy 2 females earlier this year from a seller that didn't have a ton of ratings, maybe 1 or 2, and they didn't come to me in very good shape. They had stuck eye caps, which means when they shed, the scales on their eyes didn't come off, and they start piling up, and eventually it can make them lose an eye or go blind. I was able to clear that up, with the proper husbandry, but obviously the snake wasn't very well taken care of before it got to me. So, most sellers that have, a ton of positive ratings or all positive ratings are really the people you want to buy from. And if that means, you pay a little extra for it, then you get what you pay for. I think right now maybe I have 27 ratings on there, but I'm gonna have a 100% positivity rate, which is what I'm aiming to keep, is 100% positivity, because you buy a snake from me and it's going to be healthy, but not only that, you're going to have really lifetime support from me if you have any questions or concerns or troubles with the snake. I've had a couple customers that just had an issue getting the snake on the food after they got it home, and it was something as simple as the snake was in a tub here, they put it in a glass aquarium when they got it home, and was very nervous kind of being in that wide open environment. They fixed that by getting a couple extra tight fitting snake hides in there, and the snake was eating within the week. So little things like that, where your seller, the breeder, is willing to help you after the fact, is really what you're looking for. So everybody has to start off, but anybody that has negative ratings on MorphMarket, I would steer clear of. And new sellers, unless they communicate with you very well up front and through the process, you may be wary of that, and you may want to go with a more experienced seller that has very good communication, so that if you have issues, if you have concerns, they're willing to help you through that process. All right, so you've done your research, you planned out your budget, you picked out your snake, you like the seller that you're getting the snake from. The next part is buying the snake and getting it shipped to you, if you're buying off MorphMarket or pick it out at the reptile show. Most sellers, I'm going to base this off of MorphMarket. I think there's currently like 19,000 snakes on there. So if you're looking for a snake, they have it there. That's usually the easiest way to do it. With it being around Christmas though, Ship Your Reptiles, which is Ship Your Reptiles and I think Reptiles Express are the 2 companies that most breeders use to ship snakes through FedEx. They're kind of like the middleman. They are recommending to not ship snakes until I think the 1st or 2nd week of January, and that's also going to depend on temperatures. So you're not supposed to ship snakes, I believe, if the overnight lows are below 42 on the shipping or receiving side, or above 90. I think it's 90. So you're probably going to have a hard time getting snakes shipped to you at this time of the year, especially if you live in the Northeast or in the higher elevations. Personally, I'm in Pittsburgh, and right now I can't ship anything. and I probably won't be unless there's like a really big warm spell in the middle of January. Your snake, if you're in a colder weather area, the breeder should be shipping it with a heat pack inside of there. It's typically safe to have the snake shipped to your home, but you need to be at home to pick it up. You can't have it shipped to your home, be at work, and then it's sitting on your doorstep all day, especially if the temperatures are crazy, but you should never do it anyways. If you can't pick it up when it's going to be delivered, then the best option is to have it shipped to your local FedEx hub, which I think most breeders are probably more comfortable doing anyways, because the hubs are temperature controlled, the planes that they're on are temperature controlled, and they're never sitting out in extreme heats or the extreme colds, especially if the buyer isn't home to get the snake when FedEx drops it off. So ship to hub is usually the best route. It's the safest route. It's the least amount of stress on the snake. I'm not saying FedEx throws the packages around. I don't know what they do in the back of those trucks, but if it's not sitting in the truck, bumping around, that's less stress on the snake. And again, I don't think anybody's shipping at this point during the holidays, especially due to COVID-19. Shipping is just terrible right now. There's tons of delays, and it's starting to get too cold in some areas. So pick up the snake, you buy it, you arrange the shipping details with the breeder or seller on MorphMarket, and you wait for it to get there. Once the snake gets to you, you want to take it out of the package, make sure that it's healthy, everything looks okay. If you have any issues, usually you need to communicate that to the breeder within an hour of the snake being delivered or you picking up the package at the FedEx hub. That kind of prevents any that prevents you from saying this is the breeder's fault when you left the snake on your doorstep for 4 hours in 20-degree weather. That ensures that you're doing everything you can on your end to make sure that snake gets to you safely and into their enclosure. So you're going to take the snake out of the package, check it out, make sure it looks okay, and then you're going to put it in its enclosure that's already set up, that already has water in it, that the temperatures are already okay, and you're going to leave it and don't touch it. You want to let that snake get acclimated to its home before feeding it and before bringing it out to hold it. Usually what I do when I get a new snake in is I put it in its tub, and if you have other animals, you want to set up a quarantine tub, which is a tub or a rack that you have, or an aquarium that you have in a different section of your house. What that does is it ensures that that snake doesn't bring any outside diseases or parasites into the rest of your collection. Snake mites, which is the number one issue usually with snakes, is not something you want to deal with. I had it happen to me once a couple years ago, and they are the worst thing to try to get rid of in the world. You do not want to have to deal with it, and you don't want a new snake bringing that into your collection, and then you're spending every day cleaning out every tub, spraying everything down. You don't want to do it. So you want to have quarantine set up if you already have other reptiles. If you don't have other reptiles, then it doesn't really matter. But you want to bring that snake in, put it in its tub or aquarium, and leave it alone for at least 2 to 3 days. I've had pretty good success with feeding the snake maybe the third day that they've been home, and they usually take food okay at that point. Which is also a good point to bring up, is you need to know what that snake eats. Unfortunately, because ball pythons are picky eaters, some of them will only take live food. Some of them will only take African soft fur rats, and some of them will only take mice. Typically, when I have my hatchlings, I start them off on rats immediately. I haven't had any issues with them taking rats. I hate seeing when breeders start them off on mice, because mice are not a good food to sustain them for the rest of their lives. When they're adults, you could be feeding a ball python 5, 6, 7 rats at a time to fill them up, because mice are super small. Even the biggest mice are super small, whereas a large rat is this big, My big girl princess could probably eat like one large rat a month, and she'd be okay. Whereas she'd probably have to eat 5, 6, 7, 8 rat mice a week because they're so tiny. So you need to know what the snake eats. So it's part of probably need to discuss that with the breeder beforehand. In the MorphMarket listings, it will say if the breeder filled it out correctly what the snake's eating. Usually by the time I have my hatchlings leave here, I try to make sure they're on frozen thawed rats because it's the easiest way to feed for most people, especially if they're not breeders. I personally like to feed frozen thawed. I obviously have to breed rats because I have some picky eaters that only eat live. And I have to feed live rats to brand new baby snakes because they won't take frozen thawed, 90% of them. But I try to make sure the hatchlings leave here eating frozen thawed if I can. So, if you are lucky enough to have one that's eating frozen thawed, the way that I've always thawed out the rats, the easiest to me is I get a bucket, fill it up with the hottest water I can get, and I let it sit there till it's thawed out. You kind of have to be able to feel around to make sure it's thawed out all the way through. You don't want to feed your snake a rat that's partially thawed out. You want to make sure it's thawed out all the way through. So if you're not positive if it's thawed out, leave it in the water a little longer. Some people don't like doing it that way because some ball pythons can be picky about the rats being wet. I've never had an issue with that. I usually just I leave them in the hot water in the bucket. When I'm ready to feed them, I get the feeding tongs, I pull them out, and I dangle them in there, and they eat them right away. Some ball pythons don't like you being there when they eat, so sometimes you have to leave the frozen thaw just sitting in there, and they're okay to leave in there for a couple hours if you have to. I have maybe 4 or 5 snakes that won't eat with me, dangling the rat there, so I just drop it in there, and I come back an hour later and it's gone. So you have to kind of figure out your snake. Hopefully, if you have a healthy young hatchling, they don't have any weird eating habits, and you thaw out that baby, the frozen thawed pinky or fuzzy rat, you put it on feeding tongs, you put it right in front of the snake, and it's gone. And if you keep doing it that way, they should have healthy eating habits going forward. Some ball pythons can develop, eating issues later on down the line, but most of the ones that I think all the ones that I've started off or at least gotten as babies, and I've purchased quite a few as young snakes, especially as Shredder and Danky King were 2 of them. Danky King eats frozen thawed all the time. Shredder, he goes 50-50 back and forth between live and frozen thawed. So they all have their different eating habits, but figure out what they eat before you buy the snake, because things like African soft fur rats they're kind of in between rat size and mouse size, but they're also a lot harder to come by. There aren't a ton of people that breed them. You can find them if you go to reptile shows sometimes, but they're not easy. Mice and rats are the easiest things to feed. So you want to try to stick with rats. If you're in love with a snake that eats mice, that's doable. That's not optimal. Try to stick with a snake that eats rats. After you get the snake home and it gets acclimated, and after you feed it the first time, you're probably okay to start handling it. Typically, the rule of thumb with snakes is you give them their food. Let's say you feed them on Monday. You really don't want to handle them until Wednesday. Give them 2 days to get their food further down their digestive tract to make sure they don't regurgitate. Sometimes if snakes regurgitate, it can put them off food. They don't cause huge health concerns, but if it puts them off food for too long, then you're going to run into issues like that. So you really want them to get that meal further down into their stomach, so that when you go to handle them, the chances of them regurgitating are a lot lower. At that point, 2 days later, you start handling them. The way I look at it is, if the snake's comfortable, hold them as long as you want. Hold them as often as you want. I have not seen any of my snakes get stressed out by holding them too much. Now, I have 50 plus snakes, so I can't sit here every day and hold each one of them for an hour. And some of them, there's some weeks where some of them don't even get to come out because I'm just too busy and I'm cleaning everything. And all that other stuff. But when I bring them out, they're all pretty docile. And that's the beautiful thing about ball pythons, is they're typically just very chill. You don't have to worry about the majority of them snipping at you. You don't have to worry about the majority of them getting flighty. Most of them are just awesome to handle and awesome to kind of have as a shoulder snake. I have 2 or 3 that are super flighty, and I have yeah, I think that's actually it. I don't really have any other snakes. There's a couple that are kind of defensive when you first open their tubs, but once you get them out, they're okay to handle. I think I've been bitten in 2 years with. I've had 50 snakes for most of this year, and then 10 to 15 most of last year. I think I've been bitten 1 time by a ball python, and I think I've been struck at by babies, mind you, because they come out a little more defensive. I've been struck at by babies like 3 times, but it's more defensive. They're not actually trying to bite you. It's just more like, hey, get away. But that's it. I've only actually been bitten and latched onto 1 time, and it was my girl Oreo, and it was more of a I'm hungry bite because she bit and she started coiling up around me. So it wasn't even a defensive bite. It was a I'm hungry bite. I probably didn't wash my hands after handling rats. So they're awesome snakes. They're very docile, and as long as the snake looks like it's comfortable and it's not hissing at you and it's not trying to bite you and it's not trying to run away, then the snake's probably comfortable and you're okay handling it for, ease into it. Start off the first day 15 minutes, the next day 30 minutes, maybe give it a rest after that, feed it a couple days later, give it a break from handling, and then start, kind of build up, more time each and every day. But the ones I have mostly been pretty tolerant of handling on a regular basis. All right, so you've done your research. You know how big the snake is. You know what sort of enclosure you need. You made your budget. You figured out how much all of the equipment's going to cost, all of the supplies are going to cost, what it costs on a monthly basis to take care of the snake. You figured out how much money you have left to spend on the snake itself. You go into MorphMarket, you find the snake you want, you double check, you make sure that that breeder is a reputable breeder. Then you're going to talk to the breeder, pay for the snake, coordinate a time to get it shipped, delivered to you. You're going to get that snake home. You're going to put it into quarantine if you have other snakes. If you don't have other snakes or reptiles, you're just going to put it into its new home. You're going to leave it. Don't touch it for a couple days. Feed it. See if it takes the food. If it does take the food, great. Do not handle it for a couple days. After which point you can slowly start handling the snake more and more and more and more and more. At that point, that's it. That's all you got to worry about. They grow fast, sort of. So in your first year, if the snake's comfortable, you may be okay with having 1 enclosure for that snake in the first year. If not, you may have to go into 2 enclosures. By the end of its 2nd year, you're probably going to have its adult size enclosure. So you're probably looking at maybe 3 different enclosures from the time you buy it, if you buy it as a baby, to the time it's an adult. So that's something you have to prepare for as well. You're probably going to have to buy all new equipment because the heating pad and the heat light that you have on the first aquarium is probably going to be too small for the one when it's an adult. I have a couple videos up on how to set up the tub for your snake and how to properly keep the room heated and get the humidity right for the snake as well. So those are things you can check out. I think I have a how-to playlist. So, that's it. That's how to buy your first snake. You follow those steps. Be very thorough. Please know what you're getting into when you buy it because, again, these guys can live over 20 years. Actually, my cousin had a ball python. I'm 36 and he's my age. He had a ball python that he got when he was in grade school. And it just died this year. I think he said it was probably over 25 years old. So he had that thing forever, and it still looked good till the day it died. So they can live a long time, so you have to be prepared that it's going to be kind of like it's going to outlast your dogs and your cats probably. So they're going to be around a long time. If you're not going to get into breeding, and this is more of a video based on, let's say you buy one pet snake, make sure it's the snake you want, because you don't want to have to, have buyer's remorse if you just bought something because it was the right price and not because it was, you didn't do your shopping and see all the different morphs, because there are a ton of different morphs of these snakes. Some of them can be quite pricey. Some of them are very inexpensive. A baby pied snake like this, it's called piebald, where it has the normal pattern, a little bit reduced, but also has these kind of white splotches where the pattern is completely gone. I think just a plain piebald with no other extra genes in it, they sell for $350. They're beautiful snakes. They're really probably one of the more popular ones, like just for pet purposes. And there's definitely other ones you can buy that have a ton of different genes in it that they get pricey very quick. So make sure that the snake that you picked out and, let's say this is your one snake, is the one you want, because there's a lot to choose from. There's a ton of different genes. There's a ton of different variations. And, even after I have, the collection I have, and as familiar with the majority of the genes that I am, there's still new things that I'm finding all the time that I'm like, wow, how did I not see that before? And there's combos of snakes that you don't see very often that you come across and you're just like, wow, like I didn't know you could do that with those genes. I've seen those two genes by themselves before, but adding that third gene does that to it. And you'll see once you get on MorphMarket, if you just sort, usually I think when you go into MorphMarket, go to ball pythons, and you do browse latest, it just shows you the newest ones on there. You can sort it by how expensive the snake is or how old the snake is. I usually just go by the newest releases, and you'll just see, there's one gene on this snake, there's two genes, and it's crazy. And then if you find a gene you like, you can pick that gene and only look at snakes with that gene in it, and you can see all the different variations of what that gene can do. So let's say you like the piebalds, you can pick a piebald as all of the snakes to include piebald gene, and then you can see how the different breeders work different genes into that. And you might find that while you love piebald, maybe you want an orange dream piebald, and that snake's gonna probably run you $1,000, but it's so beautiful that you're willing to save up for it and wait until you can get the extra money to buy that snake. So again, this video is really more aimed towards if you're buying this as a pet and you're just gonna have one of them. Maybe you buy a second or third one down the line, but you're not having snake racks. Really do your research. There are so many genes that I still am surprised every once in a while that something comes up on that MorphMarket list, and I'm like, geez, how did I never see that before? And they just get crazier and crazier. And once new genes get brought into the mix, I can't buy a $15,000 snake. As they come down in price, it becomes more reachable to even me. I'm like, wow, I can't believe the guys at the top of the game get to work with that. At some point, I hope I can get that too. So that's something to save up for you guys at home, as you're looking for your first pet ball python. These guys, the piebalds, if you're looking for one snake, they're beautiful. There's a lot of variance in their pattern. A lot of people sell ones that they call them emojis. A lot of the times, if you get a piebald mixed with a yellow belly gene, instead of having a lot of pattern up here, they'll just have like a little circle on their back, and it'll look like it has like a smiley face. You can kind of see it a little bit like this. There's a mouth and there's kind of two eyes, but it actually looks like the smiley face emoji on there. So there's a lot of different cool things to look at. If you guys have any questions, please comment down below. I'd be glad to answer anything you need to know. If you're looking at snakes on there and have questions about them, let me know. I have a lot of experience buying them. I probably have more experience buying these guys than I do anything else at this point. I've scored some really good deals from some breeders. There's some that snakes that I just had to have that were very expensive for a single snake, but for my collection, for what I'm trying to do in the future with breeding, I had to get it. But there's also some snakes like Princess where I just bought a big collection of them and I got a really good deal, on the price on her. So I have a lot of experience buying, and I can answer any questions you guys have if you're looking to buy your first ball python or your 10th ball python. I can tell you, if a price is good, if a price is bad, whether the info you're getting is correct or not. I can try to help you guys the best I can. So keep that in mind. I'm definitely here as a reference. I want to make sure that you guys are getting a great animal and you're having a great experience, and you can pass along your love to other people of these snakes. And really, MorphMarket to me is probably my most powerful tool as a breeder. I always thought growing up, that I'd be selling a reptile show one day, but post-COVID world, I don't know if I ever will. I don't think I need to. MorphMarket has been terrific for what I've been doing. I think I only have 2 snakes up for sale left. I sold 20 some snakes this year already, and that's all my hatchlings except for 2. I have a new earring here. So MorphMarket's awesome as long as you're dealing with the right people. That's all I can say is make sure you do your research first. Make sure who you're buying from. I don't know what she's doing. Hopefully this girl next year will be making some nice piebald babies for me. She's about 800 grams and she should be grown up by then, and she's trying to fold my ear in half and tickle me. Anyways, I'll let you guys go. Thanks for stopping by. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.